You're listening to Pitch Talks, bringing you the game.
Welcome to a brand new episode of Bringing You the Game by PitchTALKS. I'm joined by my co-host Sam.
Hiya.
And today I'm very excited to introduce Graeme Spink, former director of Sky, now freelance television director. Good morning, Graeme. Thank you for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm good.
Before we start talking about your career, it would be great to understand what sport meant to you growing up and what gave you that passion to then want to work in sport later on.
Always loved sport. Strangely enough, not a massively sporty background from my parents. My dad, way back when, used to be a very good swimmer, but that was sort of it. He never sort of played football, rugby, anything like that. My mum's side, my granddad was a passionate cricket fan. Always was a member at Canterbury, down at the St Lawrence ground. So we always used to spend our summer holidays there. We always used to tie it in so that it would be Canterbury Cricket Week when Kent had a home fixture. We would always be there. I always loved playing cricket, football. Table tennis was one that I got into. Was actually not too bad at it. But yeah, same as quite a lot of people, never to a standard that it was ever going to be a profession. So sort of channeled it the other way and sort of filmed the people that are better than me.
How did you go then from the start of your career to then ending up as the director at Sky?
I actually started, it was sort of thanks down to my aunt who used to work for Rank Xerox Films, not the film side, she was an accountant, but in that sort of division. She always knew that I wanted to do it. She always sort of said I should be in front of the camera because I was a kid. I was always a joker, messing around and stuff. But actually when it comes to it, you go, no, I don't want to be in front of camera. It was never something that would make me feel comfortable. I now tell people to stop doing that and it's all good. But yeah, so she actually got me a magazine called Broadcast Weekly, which had colleges and courses. And I ended up seeing one in there, which was based in Guildford, a place called St Catherine's Drama Studio. So I actually did a stage management, sort of theatre and television production. It was run by a guy called Adrian Cooper, who was a ex-ITV director way back when. He did the TV side, and it was also an acting school as well, which was run by his wife, June Cooper, who was an actress. So I went there, did a course. I got a certificate. There was nothing, it wasn't a BTEC, it wasn't this, but it was great and it gave me a grounding. And then from then on, it was like, yeah, I do want to do this. I did a little bit in theatre to start with. As part of the course, we worked at the Even Arno Theatre. So did a bit there, which is the first gig you work on as an assistant floor manager with Brian Blessed and what was it? I think it's Carl Bauman, who, for anyone out there old enough, it was a program called Brushstroke, and that was the panto which we worked on. From then sort of went, not really going to be my thing. I think I do want to go TV. So I then wrote numerous letters, hundreds. And it's funny, actually, a couple of days ago, I was tidying out the office, going through boxes, and found, I think, virtually every rejection letter that, I don't know why I kept them. But I've got old school ones from ITN and ITV and Hat-Trick Productions and way back when, which are just, sorry, we haven't got anything for you. No, haven't got anything, do keep in touch, that sort of thing. Is actually really strange nowadays because everything's done on email. You just don't get letters sent back to you. I actually got one back from a company called TVP, which was a production company in Soho. They had offices in Poland Street and Golden Square, right next to where Virgin Radio was filmed. So it was always quite funny, you sort of walk into work in the morning and Chris Evans would walk past you or some of their guests and stuff. So I actually went there as a runner, which is, probably everybody's starting out in TV. It's the least glamorous job in the world. It's making cups of tea and coffee for people, getting them food. Soho's slightly better because we were looking after clients. So you'd get big clients coming in to do music videos who would have a bottle of champagne and ask for a McDonald's. So you sort of walk out, go and get their food, sit back, and then I basically just sort of watch the editors pop in every now and again, sort of saying, do you want anything else? Do you need anything? 9 times out of 10, they were fine. So you just go back and watch the edits happen. And it was from then that I got into the VT side of things, so videotape. But again, something completely out of the blue for people nowadays, like a what? Tape? What's that? You had a machine called a 1 inch, which is basically a reel, 2 reels, and you connect them together and you have to lace the machine up. And nowadays it's, it's a dinosaur of a machine. So I got into that, did a year there, and then again sort of realised that I wanted to get into more live programming, because everything there was just dubbing, tape to tape, making big copies. So we had a contract with Buena Vista, so there was a lot of watching films, QCing, so quality control. Some days it was great, you'd get to watch a really good film start to finish and check that it was all right. And then the worst one was when I had to watch, I think it was 24 reels of a Take That concert, and it was 24 separate cameras of Take That. So I think I watched their one sort of show 24 times from 24 different angles.
I suppose you'll never forget that experience.
Oh, do what you've done there. Yeah. Nowadays, my kids would have thought that was the best job, but I didn't have kids at the time, and it was just, again. So from there, I basically went to overnights there. I sort of applied to do an overnight, not the best job in the world, but it just gave me the chance to write letters, go to interviews during the day. So I actually then got an interview at Sky, which I went to, which was great. And as I was saying about a 1 inch, one of the first things they have you do is lace a 1 inch to check that, you can actually do it. Quick interview with a guy called Del Hobbs, who used to run the VT department there. Great guy, did a lot for me. Luckily, I got the job.
This is Pitch Talks.
What was that like going into a company like Sky?
Strange, because it wasn't as big as what it is now. You go there now, it's multi-million-pound state-of-the-art buildings, and the VT area was literally in what was sort of an old shed type building at the time, but it was still doing a lot of the big work. Again, it was full of tape machines, which again in this day and age you just don't get. So it's noisy, it's dark. You spend pretty much all your time in the dark. It's the one thing with our job, you sat in a dark room. I've come onto it later, but you sort of travel around the world to glamorous locations and you walk into a truck and sit in the dark all day.
Am I right in saying you joined B Sky B in, is it 94, Graeme?
Yes, yeah.
Quick look at your LinkedIn profile, and I thought that sort of go back to you started in 94, which was way before my time. Don't want to make you feel old or anything, but
oh no, I'm over that now. I get that a lot. It's fine.
What is the biggest difference for you from sort of when you started?
Fundamentally, nothing's changed other than technology. People still sit and talk. They still run VTs in and stuff. You have chats. It's just what goes on around it and the way it gets put to air. So the technology is, like I say, head and shoulders above when I started.
Yeah.
You don't have tape machines anymore. Everything's on disk. It's EBS or an X-file. So everything is exported. You don't dub one tape to another and sit there. It just plug it in. There it is. It's on your laptop. Send that to the OB. The studios are changed, but not all of them. A lot of the work that I still do is still just in a normal studio with a backdrop, a monitor in the middle. Fundamentally, you're still producing the show. It's like I said, it doesn't matter whether you're doing replays off a tape machine or a disc machine, it's just quicker on a disc machine. But fundamentally, you're still turning around the footage that the cameramen are giving you. Studio chats, again, vision mixing desks have progressed, massively. So you can do a lot more. You can, make backgrounds, fill screens, make boxes, like we're here now on a Skype call, you can make up different boxes for chats, which are coming to its a lot more at the moment with social distancing. A lot of programs are just doing stuff in boxes. I'm not a massive fan. I'm not going to lie. I think it's nice, if you can just see everybody where they are rather than three big heads right next to each other. 2 meters apart isn't that bad. You're limited sometimes where you go, because if there isn't the space, you have to do it. And that's why they do it. You have one person in one position, one in another, and you just put them in a box as if they are next to each other. But so going back to it, fundamentally, it's just the technology that's changed. It's like anything, the sports are getting quicker.
Yeah.
So the technology is getting quicker. One of the fastest things I work on is darts. It's phenomenal, the speed that they're throwing, and, you've got to get across that. Cameramen have got to get there. There's Sky have gone down the robotic route, which can work. It is very good, but you get the odd time where the camera, isn't in the right place. And on a checkout, that's not as ideal as it should be. But the darts I cover with Matchroom, we still use cameramen, and they're, robots are great, but they break down. Cameramen themselves don't tend to.
You're listening to Pitch Talks, bringing you the game.
You mentioned earlier about the jobs taking you all over the world. What were some of the greatest moments that you've witnessed whilst being at Sky?
It's one of those things, you witness it, but you're never there. Again, like I say, you're in a car park. I mean, the Lions tour in 2001 was probably the first big job I went on. I went out there as an assistant producer because that's sort of the progression that you go. I started saying VT at Sky, and then I worked a lot on the superbikes. A guy called Martin Turner, who's exec producer and director, and then he got the head role on the rugby union when they won the rights to that, and he knew me from working in the VT on the superbikes and sort of said to me, look, I know you want to get into directing and stuff, but do you want an AP's role? So I actually took an AP role. So that was where I moved away from VT and sort of learned through him. So I went on the Lions tour. Yeah, it's phenomenal. Anyone who's a sports fan, I think, whether you're a rugby fan, it's the pinnacle. It's the pinnacle for the players. It's an amazing tour. I think that the funniest thing is I actually saw one try live where, you're stuck in a truck and it's like, right, because we weren't the host broadcasters. So that's the problem. When you go abroad, you're just adding on the studio to it. So you do all your pieces in the week. You have a studio on site, but it's the host broadcaster that actually cuts the match. So bar getting analysis ready for half time and full time, there's not that much to do. So I actually said, right, are you happy for me to nip in? And I was like, yeah, go and watch for 5 minutes. And I got in just as Brian O'Driscoll did his mazy little run and dotted down under the post. And to be in the stadium, that was amazing. It was just, I'm actually here working on it, but I've seen that and I didn't see it through a 24-inch monitor. I actually witnessed it with my own eyes.
10 minutes after it happened, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that would have been one. Again, I mean, it's not strictly working on it, but I went to the Bruno McCall fight at Wembley because I knew the director was working on it and sort of said to him, any chance? He was like, yeah, just pop down and let us know when you're here. So I sort of called him and he was like, oh yeah, come to the trucks, because I had my pass which got me to the trucks. I was never going to get in. And then they sorted out a pass. I actually went in with a cameraman who was filming some stuff and just kept walking and no one stopped me, and found a seat. I think it was about 4 rows behind the ringside set. So not actual ringside, but rows behind that, and you'd still sort of turn around and go, oh, so-and-so from EastEnders behind me. You go, you've got a worse seat than me. So that was, again, phenomenal atmosphere, and I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't been at Sky. What was it, 2 years later, I think? Worked on Bruno Tyson, which was a defence of his, which we did, which I think was Sky's first pay-per-view boxing. It was all done from the studios back in Osterley, so it was an overnight, and that, again, just to work on it, unfortunately, Bruno obviously got knocked out. Surprise, surprise, unfortunately. But to work on it was brilliant. And it was one of those where there was a big meeting beforehand, because big event, and all the big wigs had been told, don't come into the gallery. Everybody in there doesn't need the pressure of you lot all stood there, critiquing them or putting stuff in. So we sat there, we came on air, run the first, and again, this is back in tape days. So it's put a tape in, press play the next one, Vision Mix would mix to that, eject a tape, put another tape in. It wasn't just a clip that you just went that one, and rolled them. And I remember we'd got through, I think it was 6 pre-records that we'd done at the top, and there was a link to the people out in the States. And we came back and we went into a big sort of VT, 10-minute long VT setup of the week. And I remember leaning back in my chair, looking round, and every single head was just stood behind us. And it was one of those that you go, I'm really glad I didn't see you before we came on air, because you wouldn't just, oh, blimey, they're watching, this will be nervous. And it wasn't, and obviously they just didn't care less, but the show went very well. And yeah, so again, that is definitely one. Watching the Ryder Cup as a punter at the Belfry, again, through Sky. My girlfriend at the time, wife now, was a production coordinator at Sky, so she was working on it. So, it was like, well, I've got somewhere to stay. All I need is a pass. Knew the production manager very well. And he was like, yeah, absolutely fine. So there was even a point when I got to take a buggy that no one was using and drive around the Belfry following Tiger Woods and such like, which was brilliant. Getting back to work matters. One of the last things I did at Sky was a programme called Game Changers. Saturday morning kids show, effectively based around sport. It was hosted by Di Doherty and Darren Campbell, who were brilliant to work with. And we just got famous sports people in every week with a bunch of kids, and they taught them skills and drills. And it was basically to get kids active and get them back into sport. And it was brilliant. But it's like a lot of these things, it's a great idea and everyone says, yeah, this is brilliant. But then after a couple of years, it doesn't bring money in. It's not a big spinner. And it just got pushed aside. And I think it's now a half-hour edited show. But while it was a big thing, we did have the big guests. We did an awards show, which was great, with David Beckham, Jessica Ennis Hill. So working with them, brilliant. People say, what's it like working with David Beckham? Great, really nice bloke. Yeah. Just a small bloke, entourage of I don't know how many people, doing bits like that to his hair. That's the brand. That's what it is.
Is that how he looks so good all the time, do you reckon?
Oh, yeah. When you go to a break and you sort of look on the camera and go, who's that there? You go, oh, that's his hairdresser. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah. We don't have that luxury, And he bought his own. It's not one of our, it's not Makeup Lady from Sky. It was his own people. But I suppose the pinnacle was to that show was we did a show with Prince Harry at a school. It was a school where they sort of have disabled children, and we tied it in with the Invictus Games. So we had 3 people that were in the Invictus Games there as the guests and working with royalty, and again, you talk to these people, just a nice bloke. There was no big police presence or security. It was really relaxed. Yeah, it's great when you get to work with people like that and they're actually as, nice people and they get it.
You're listening to Pitch Talks.
You then left Sky to come on to a more freelance television director role. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing there day to day?
Yeah, I didn't want to leave Sky. I was made redundant, which wasn't a shock, if I'm being brutally honest. People were going to go and the person that was in charge, I sort of thought that might be on the cards. So I was lucky in the fact that being made redundant, I had a redundancy. I was at Sky for 22 years. So I had a sort of fail-safe for a year, but luckily didn't need it. One of the other directors that I worked with, her husband is in charge of ATP Media, and he got in touch with me literally a couple of days after he'd heard, because she obviously went and told him what had happened, and he got in touch and said, right, I might have something for you. So it's not what you're normally doing, it's not directing, but it will get you back into work, and then while you're there you can have a look and see what you think of directing tennis. So I was like, okay, great. He said, look, that's about all I can say. I'll get back to you in a week or so. Didn't hear anything for a week, maybe a week and a half. And then he came back to me and said, yeah, right, I want you to go to Indian Wells and Miami and work with Novak Djokovic, who's being filmed for an Amazon documentary. It's like, sorry, what? Okay, yeah. So I did that, which was great because it was leaving the following month. So I went back to Sky and said, like, all right, here's your leaving date. And I was like, no, I'm leaving before that. Oh, no, you don't have to. I went, no, I do, because I can't be working for you and working for my other job. So that was brilliant to be able to do it. Just nice that, work came on so quickly.
Sort of landed on your feet sort of thing.
Yeah. And again, but it comes down to the fact that television is a big family. It's worldwide, but actually, a lot of people wherever you go. That basically was it. I knew the guy I knew from Sky. He used to work at Sky years ago before he left for ATP. So I went out there and I was basically babysitting the film crew, because when you're working on site, you can't just go where you want. There are certain places that you're not allowed to due to the tournament. There's certain places you go, well, actually, no, we're about to walk our camera here, so you can't be there. So he basically just wanted me to babysit them and make sure they weren't getting in the way of the main production. So that was brilliant. Novak Djokovic actually pulled out of Miami, which was a bit of a blow. So I was like, oh, I've never been to Miami. That would have been great. But actually, it was a really nice thing from the other directors that have been working on, they've been working on tennis for sort of 10 years or so. They actually said, look, Miami's brutal. You can be there till 2:30 in the morning, players still playing on court. It's not just the schedule, it's the weather. The weather's always terrible there, so you get a lot of rain delays. So they actually asked production if they could keep me on to go out there and help with the relief shifts. So that's sort of what I did, And the funniest thing is the first match that I sat down and actually directed was a Carl Edmund match, which I knew was going out live on Sky. So it was sort of double-barrelled, You don't want me, but I'm actually now making your content.
Yeah.
Again, it's just a nice thing. It's not a smug thing. It was just nice to know that someone had faith in you to go and do that. So I worked on that with them, and then he came back at Monte Carlo. So they phoned and said, "Do you mind going to Monte Carlo?" No, I don't mind. So I did that. And again, then got to sit in the chair a bit more and direct some more tennis. During the sort of off times, I got some stuff with Chelsea TV. They do a lot of filming at Cobham for their sort of under 18s, under 20s. So I did some sort of 4-camera bits and pieces with them. Premier League productions. Stockley Park. Again, it's just a weird thing that I didn't even know existed. But you go to Uxbridge and make television programs to do with football that get broadcast all around the world. You're being watched by millions of people. So that was great. So I did some bits there. 2 years ago, I actually spent 2 months in Tokyo for DAZN. As an executive producer role. But basically they got the J-League contract. And the difference in Japan to here is if I was doing an OB, outside broadcast, for those that don't know, I would get a crew of people, so cameramen from all around the country, wherever I was. So if it was in Newcastle, I'd been Surrey, I'd drive up to Newcastle. In Japan, if the game's in Newcastle, it's covered by a television company in Newcastle who might have been covering a pop show the day before. So if it's in Sapporo, it's Sapporo TV. If it's Tokyo, it's Tokyo. So we basically sort of went to all the broadcasters and told them how to cover football. They have a very different way of covering things. And DAZN's obviously mantra was it's got to look the same around as it does around the world. People aren't going to watch it if it doesn't look as good as what they get on a Super Sunday or a Monday Night Football or a BT football. So that was, again, amazing experience. Not nice being away. That's the one thing. You're away for a hell of a long time, and you speak to your kids like I'm speaking to you now for a half hour a day, and that's it. And then you're at work because the time zones don't always tie up. But yeah, so that's it. I now sort of went from driving up and down the M1 and the M6 to Wigan and Leeds to getting on a plane and flying to Bogota and Indian Wells. And so, yeah, I can't complain.
You're listening to Pitch Talks.
I feel like it's a silly question, but what do you love most about what you do?
Most of it. Do you know what? All of it. I love to travel, or did, places you get to go. But it's the camaraderie with people. You are a big team. You're there. If you're in Indian Wells, it's 2 weeks and then straight on to Miami. So you are with the same people for virtually a month. Everyone gets on. There's not normally a crossword. People, fallouts and stuff, but you're a big sort of family where you work all day and then you go back to the hotel, you have a couple of beers in the bar afterwards, you see everyone in the gym in the morning and then you're back on site. I love it. I mean, again, I hate being away from the family for so long, but, needs must. It's one of those, although that is slightly changing now with remote productions that, we're not going to go away as much. There's still limitations. That's what everyone's working on to try and make the coverage better being remote, but most people at home wouldn't know.
This is Pitch Talks.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask was obviously when this talk of sport coming back after, I think it was sort of the Bundesliga came back first and then the Premier League and sort of as everything was coming back, the talk was, well, how are they going to come back when they need, X amount of people to actually just be able to put the thing on? Yeah. And for someone I've been involved in rugby match days for Wasps. So that's something we both got in common. Very much at the opposite end of it. I used to dress up as a 7-foot wasp. Being involved in the match day, I know exactly what you mean about the fact that you're there, but you're not actually there. I used to sit and watch most of the games from inside the sort of one of the changing rooms that they had, and most of the tries I saw on the TV. And if it was in the last 5 minutes, I actually saw it live, and even then it was through the mouth of the wasp. But sort of getting back to my point was how many people does it actually take to get a Premier League match on from a broadcasting point of view?
It depends on the production, whether it's a live BT Sky match, you've got 100 odd plus people on site because there's so many people involved, from riggers to rig the cameras, the cameramen themselves, all the VT ops with your talent, makeup. The more cameras you have, the more people you have. You've got more VTs, more racks engineers needed to look after the cameras. But then on the smaller, what was the Saturday 3:00 kickoffs that were all covered for, I think it was Football First was the sort of first thing where you could watch the entire game back. You're probably talking, 30, 40 people, because you had a maximum of 8 cameras, smaller VT spec. There was no producer, no presenters. So it was sort of you, a unit manager, a production manager, VT, a couple of engineers, sound, and that was it, and with your cameras. So it varies from show to show. So yeah, it all depends on what time it is. But the big things, you're talking sort of 100 plus people.
Hence why they were so, I think, delayed is probably the right word, and making sure that everything was in place to come back, right?
Yeah. And again, it came down to sort of the government saying what you could and couldn't do. So once that was put in place, everyone then started out where they needed to go. And the best thing was a remote production back at either BT or Telegenic, as other companies doing as well at their own bases. But yeah, because it just cuts everyone down. So on site, you've effectively got your cameramen, your racks engineers, sound, and that's sort of it, bar riggers and bits and pieces. But the predominant force that looked after the actual show, so producer, director, PA, vision mixers, you had a sound engineer as well back there. They're all just back at base.
Is it still the case in the rugby where you before the lockdown, you'd actually have someone physically running the microphone up and down the touchline as well?
Yeah,
I remember doing that.
Did you do that?
I did that a couple of times for BT back in the early days when they first got the sort of the rugby rights. I remember being about 2 meters away from Christian Wade scoring in the corner because I was sprinting down the touchline. And for people that can't see, I am not a winger, so I was a long way behind Christian Wade when he scored.
You're listening to Pitch Talks.
I think finally, the last question I have is for anyone listening to this. The job sounds great. This sort of experience, the places you get to go to. Who wouldn't want to work in sports/television production? So, for those people who are perhaps starting from the beginning, they know they'd love to do a role like yours. Where would you advise them to begin?
I mean, the thing with TV is it predominantly is that get your foot in the door. Get your foot in the door somehow. So runner, is always a job that, I think if you speak to virtually every person, there's not many that just walk straight into either being a director or a producer. You've all started somewhere. So get into a television company or a post-production company like myself, because it's there that you then pick up names. You go, I must remember that name. I'll try and get in touch with them, or get your foot in the door is the first thing. When you're there, just work out what it is you want to do. Because when I first got to Sky, you suddenly come across producers and editors and directors that up until then you knew they were sort of there. You knew their jobs happened, but you didn't really know the role in itself. So it's finding out exactly what you want to do and basically be a nuisance. I know in a good way, but be a nuisance. When I first started as a VT op, I was Sky. So you had your freelance crew who were your main men. They were the best out there, and that's why Sky employed them. But because of monetary, it's like, we need a couple of Sky guys. And you sit there and you walk into the truck and the AP would go, right, you're on Y today, camera 1. You don't get many replays on camera 1. It's just the main camera that follows the match. That's it. So it was a nuisance. So sort of, how does that machine work? What's that do? And can I have a go at that? And in a way, just badgered people until they go, oh yeah, give me. And now doing the job that I do, one thing that I think was forgotten a bit, you always had this one person. And I actually had a conversation with one of my old bosses when I was at Sky and said, look, if something happens to him on the M1, who's going to cover? Why don't we, could I train up to do that? We always get by. We don't always get by, actually have a plan in place. And 9 times out of 10, you will always get by. But there's an element of put people in a job, have a couple of people doing it. But there was always a very much, he does that, he does that, he does that. And then those people didn't want anyone else to know their job. And I've never been like that. I don't get it. So be a nuisance. And again, the VT ops might be looking at me going, I don't want to show him what to do because he might then take my job. It's like, well, I'm not, because I'm staff. So I'm not going to, and actually they weren't like that. And they were all really, really helpful. Funny enough, I'm actually working with one of the guys that taught me a lot at the weekend. He's one of my VT ops and now I'm the director. So yeah, be a nuisance in a good way and just have a focus to know which way you want to go, because it's not always director, it might be producer, it might be an editor, but do that. Have a goal that you want to do. I mean, one thing that I not regret, but it sort of got brought more to a focus during COVID, was only working in sport. Because actually, if you can direct a sports chat show, you can direct a news chat show or a music chat show. Predominantly, it's talking heads, regardless what the content is. If someone's talking, 9 times out of 10, you cut that camera to 9. You wouldn't leave them just, and look at someone else. But having sport on my CV, I've written off to thousands of other companies. Don't get replies. It's not even a thanks for you just don't hear anything. And I think that is one thing. It's sort of like pigeonholed as such. So if there's a way of being able to spread yourself to say, actually, I like doing sport, but I want to do that as well. And like I say, it was highlighted with COVID because all my work went, but people working in news were still working. So to be able to have that flexibility and again, it's actually quite good, because you might pick up something from a news show that you can bring into another show, and vice versa. Flexible and drive, have the drive to sort of push yourself to know what you want to do and make the people around you aware that that's what you want to do and that you can do the job. Because everyone's got to start somewhere. I had to do my first live replay at some point. I had to direct my first show at some point. So people, will give you a chance.
No, I think that's been absolutely fascinating. You sort of just learning about your career, what you've done, and the things that the sporting events that you've seen live. I say, obviously, you say live in inverted commas. I know that, but it's still fascinating, and it's been really great talking to you today, Graeme.
Actually, going to have one more point, if I can, on that. Another thing, a key factor in what I would say, be nice. Don't treat the person who effectively is apparently below you in that manner. I mean, when I came up, in the days that I came up through Sky, it was a very shout first, ask questions later. And I think it was from having that happen, not because you've done something majorly wrong, but shouting at people doesn't get the best out of them. If anything, it makes your production less of a production because they're not behind you. Any director, and I'd love to hear otherwise, will tell you that they can't be as good as what everyone tells them they are without the crew that are working for them. Without good cameramen, you're not getting good shots and you can't put them to line. Without a good producer, your content isn't going to be as good. Without a good sound man, the sound quality might not be as good. Without a runner making your tea, might sound, benign, you get thirsty and grumpy. But if you've got a good runner, they're going to look after you. So just treat people with the respect that they need for their job. And that's one thing that I think I always try to instill in myself, that I didn't like it when I was shouted at, so why would I want to shout at someone else? And at the end of the day, your production is only going to get better if everyone wants to work for you. You get someone that doesn't like you, they're not going to offer their best. Not saying there are people, but that could be a case where if someone doesn't get on with the person, who's their lead cameraman or lead sound guy, they might not offer something that you might get if you actually treat people with a bit of respect. So like I say, the director pushes the button and steers the ship. Without all the other people around, it's not going to happen.
So as the old saying goes true, it's a team sport on and off the field.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. And like I say, you'll meet them again. So if you shout at someone one week, you probably still see him 2 weeks down the line, and you've got to work with them again. So just be nice to people.
Oh, it's a good little life tip there, isn't it? Just full stop. Just be nice to people, and they'll be nice to you back, right? Yeah.
Not many people want to screw up. They didn't do it on purpose, and give people a chance. If you've got a cameraman that says, "I've never done camera 4 today," have a go. Because unless you do it, you never know whether you do it. And actually, you might get on it and go, "He's better than the last guy that did it." You might have a sound mixer that has never mixed before. Well, let him have a go. Everyone's got to start somewhere.
Absolutely. And I think with that concludes another episode of Bringing You the Game by PitchTALKS. We hope you've enjoyed, and make sure you tune in next time for more compelling stories and career tips on how to get into sport. Until next time, Graeme, thank you very much for today.
Thank you.
Cheers, Graeme.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Bringing You the Game by PitchTALKS. For more information on our latest episodes, careers advice, or to even get involved as a guest, get in touch with the team at mitch@pitch-talks.com. That's mitch@pitch-talks.com, or send us a message on any of our social media platforms. Thanks for tuning in. game. Pitch Talks. All Pitch Talks content is copyright protected. Pitch Talks.